Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for attending tonight. Great to see some familiar faces and some new faces. Welcome to what we're calling our inaugural Aged Care Summit. We hope that the information you're going to listen to and digest tonight is going to hopefully broaden your awareness and knowledge of the aged care sector. And to help you guys make decisions potentially for yourselves or for family members and loved ones, family or friends. So again, welcome. Just a couple of quick housekeeping notes. If you need to use the amenities, the restrooms, back out the hallway and upstairs. Find gentlemen's and ladies' bathrooms up there. And also in the event of an emergency, please make your way out the same way you came in out that front door. So again, welcome. We're here tonight to discuss all things aged care from the beginning to the end of it. There's a big process that's involved with understanding that journey. It doesn't start at during residential aged care from day one. It does take a bit of a journey, a bit of a process. And the more you're aware of that process now, as you maybe, like I said, go on this journey for yourselves or for loved ones, hopefully the better decisions you can make, be it financial or for the family at large. So, obviously tonight, anything we discuss here is general advice. What we would invite you to do after is reach out to one of the partners that you're connected with, be it Mirror accountants or GSR lawyers or ourselves, Block Depot, and for us to sit down with you one-on-one and give you that bit more direct and tailored advice that will cater to your needs. Okay. So tonight we've got speaking with us a few illustrious panel speakers and guests, starting with Michelle from COASIT. So COASIT are a home support care service that also provide care services in the NDIS space as well. So Michelle's going to talk a lot more tonight about home care, how that works, the journey there, and that sort of process between home support into potentially residential aged care. Joined tonight by Marcus here from Challenger. So Challenger are a large financial product provider. They specialise in providing and building annuities that help support not just aged care strategies, but also retirement income. So really important. We have Mr. Alf Romano here. Some of you obviously know Alf. Our sort of go-to legal, the man that's been seen a lot in the world, and we definitely lean on Alf a lot regarding our experiences with clients. We have Mr. Michele Romano from Mirror Accountants. Some of you may know Michele, and some of his team are here as well tonight, which is lovely to see. And Michele is going to focus on a little bit of tax strategy and asset structuring in the lead up to potentially looking at entering residential aged care. And touch on some of those trusts and structures that may be available to you. And then I'll round it all out with a bit more understanding about the new residential aged care reforms and how those numbers and those calculations sort of do work.
My role basically at Challenger is to meet with financial planners. Challenger offers a lot of financial product solutions to help people who are retired or in aged care, but I'm not tasked to talk about those today. That's for your financial planners to speak with you about. What I'm going to talk about is residential aged care. So we've just talked about home care. So that's receiving care in the home. I'm going to talk about if you actually need to go into care at a facility, and what that means for you and why it's so important. Now, this is a chart that I use quite a bit to just set the scene for what is different when you're a person who's accumulating wealth to a person who's retired and now drawing down on your savings, and then ultimately getting to that point where you might need aged care or think about at the end of your life. And I won't harp on about this too long, but what people see their retirement journey as, and this is a very simple representation of it, is that I retire, I travel quite a bit, I do some improvements to my home, my kids have their kids, so now I have grandkids, and then I sit in a rocking chair and I die. So that's retirement in the most.
Well done.
In reality, all of these things happen, and no doubt a lot of fun things as well. But you know, in my role, I'm tasked with talking about aged care, which lends me down the side of being a little bit more morbid. But all of these blue sections are actually needs for you to consult with some kind of financial professional, whether it be a lawyer, your accountant, your financial planner, because when these things happen, things change. And one of the biggest things that's going to happen, or a few of them, is you'll have change in health. You might have a relationship change, and that might be that one member of the couple's passed away. You might relocate to be close to your children because you might need your children to start looking after you. You might need to make modifications to your home because your mobility's been impaired, and then preparing for aged care. And so preparing for aged care, as I'm going to go on about, can be quite a costly exercise. Aged care is not cheap, particularly when we look at residential aged care, but for some, it's actually a non-negotiable. It's something that might happen when you go to hospital. Hospital will say, I'm sorry, but you can't go home. But you need to go into a facility. And so when I'm speaking to people like this, I recognize that this is not necessarily going to be you right away. So you're not planning necessarily for yourself. But I imagine all the people in the room know or have known somebody that is in residential aged care, or perhaps you've had a conversation with somebody, or you have a loved one and you've identified perhaps a need that they may need some kind of help. And that help journey starts at home, and they may be receiving a home support package, as we just looked at, but you might have this Christmas conversation, and Christmas has just been, it seems like an eternity ago, but Christmas has just been, and Christmas is the time when we see all our loved ones again, particularly the elderly people in our lives. What we find in the aged care industry is that a lot of entries into aged care happen after Christmas because people, family members and friends have identified health needs of people they know, and then perhaps started the conversation. And now I'm going to start the conversation with you as when you identify those needs, perhaps where do you start? And then what does it look like when we get to residential aged care stage? So there's bits and pieces of wording here. What I would look for though, and to think about, is those people you know and that you're planning for. It might not be obvious and it might not be immediate. My wife's grandmother, for example, she lives with my wife's parents. She's not particularly well, but she does need a little bit of help. What will happen to her inevitably is that she is starting to deteriorate, so she will have a care need. She's gone through this process of getting what they call an ACAT assessment. So that's the aged care assessment team. And they came out to her house, they asked her a number of questions, they identified her needs and approved her for a level of home care. So that's what we've just been through. So somebody can now come and give her support in the home. That will ultimately get to a point where she can no longer be in the home and receiving care from my wife's parents, and the people who support her under a home care package, and she may need to go into what we would call a residential aged care facility. And when she does that, she's going to need to get assessed again. So she can do that voluntarily, or my wife's parents might instruct that on her behalf if she's lost capacity. Or if something happens and she needs to go to hospital, sometimes that ACAT assessment will be done at the hospital. So they'll have somebody that will approve you effectively for residential aged care. But that's the first step. If somebody wants to go into residential aged care, they have to be approved. So, sorry, I thought that was going to be something different, so I jumped back. But where I would go first is to the My Aged Care website. And I would always direct people here because it's the government's website for giving you all the information that is at a very high level about what aged care is. This is also where you go to get a voluntary ACAT assessment. So you have to register through this to be able to get that assessment for residential aged care. You can also look on here for different providers of residential aged care in the area where you live and see how much they cost. And I'm going to get to those costs right now. But before I do, I've sort of jumped the gun a little bit here, but people over age 50, 60% of people over age 50 are worried about paying for residential aged care. And like I said, it is expensive. Think about it like this. You have a house that you live in. You're going to have to buy another house and go in there and somebody's going to give you nursing care in that house. That's effectively how residential aged care works. And so a lot of people who go into residential aged care have to sell the house that they were living in to be able to afford to pay for the aged care service that they're going into. The people are worried about paying for care. And then what happens if you're a member of a couple and one of you needs to go into residential aged care? You still need to buy this other house, which is your aged care facility that you're going to receive care in, but you can't sell the other one because your spouse is living there and they're healthy and they have a number of years left. So the advice around that can become quite complicated, and it is very important that you see somebody to get that advice, because structuring that incorrectly can be quite detrimental to a financial position. So let's look at the cost of care. Best way to look at this, and we've talked about this 1 November date, is this is when the aged care rules changed, and this is when the aged care costs changed. So the top line and everything that's in the grey shaded boxes is the old rules, and everything in the green are the few things that have changed. And I'm going to quantify this in a minute, but just to be very conceptual about it for you, when you go into residential aged care, like I said, you have to buy another house, and they call that an accommodation deposit. So if you go into a facility, they're going to advertise an amount that you need to pay for an accommodation deposit. It's called a RAD, a refundable accommodation deposit. You can choose to pay that, or you can choose to not. Most of them around Brisbane are between 600,000 and $1 million. So is what I would say. 600,000 is on the very low end. They go up to about 1.25 million in Brisbane. Forget the sort of $758,000 number for the minute. That is effectively a base level that facilities will start to charge as we move forward for that RAD. If you choose not to pay your RAD, you basically rent the bed. So I'm not going to buy this room, I'm going to rent it. And that's a 7.61% interest on whatever you have it paid at current date. So that rate changes from time to time, but at the moment it's 7.61%. So let's just say my RAD or the accommodation was $500,000. If I don't pay that $500,000, I pay 7.61% on having not paid that. So it's like having a home loan. But at a slightly higher interest rate. So that'll cost you about $37,000 a year. The next, so that's accommodation. I either rent the bed or I buy the bed. The thing that has changed there is once you've bought the bed, so I bought that bed for $500,000 and now I'm going to stay there for the rest of my life. The facility used to refund that refundable accommodation deposit back to your estate in full. So I paid $500,000. Once I've died, my estate gets $500,000 back. The rules have changed to the facilities are going to keep 2% per year for up to 5 years of that RAD. So in the example I gave of 500,000, they're going to keep $10,000 a year of that for 5 years. And that's 2%, isn't it? Yes. For 5 years. So up to a maximum of 10% is basically where I'm going. If the resident stays there for 5 years, the facility is going to keep just under $50,000 of that. I won't get into how that's calculated on a daily basis, but the basic daily care fee, and now we get into the cost that everybody pays on an ongoing basis. So we funded our accommodation, and that's just to get our seat in the room. That's just to get our bum on the bed. Before any of the care is taken care of. Once we start getting care, we've got this basic daily care fee. Now, everybody pays the basic daily care fee at $65.55 a day at the moment. That indexes as well. So every year on the 20th of March and the 20th of September, these fees all index. But it's 85% of the full age pension. So if you're a full age pensioner, that's going to eat up 85% of your full age pension. The means tested care fee, so basically the care fee remains unchanged under the new rules. What has changed is we used to have this means tested care fee, which we still have. It just has two names now, and it's means tested slightly differently. The means tested care fee is that if I have more money, I pay more. If I have less money, I pay less. It is the crux of it. That's been split into two fees now, such that the first fee, the hoteling supplement, pretty much everybody pays, and I'll get to who pays that. And then the non-clinical care contribution is your main means tested fee, and it caps out at about $105 a day. The hoteling supplement contribution kicks out at about $22 a day. So all in all, and I'll get to the numbers in a minute, these fees can cap out at about $70,000 a year. So that's after you've bought your bed or rented your bed. The rest is about $70,000 a year. And I'll get to the asset levels that you need to have to be paying that. Extra services fees, they remain more or less the same. So a lot of facilities will say, if you're going to stay here, we've got these extra services we can supply, and they'll cost you $10 a day or $20 a day or whatever it might be. Some facilities will give you an extra glass of wine with dinner, or Foxtel, or a choice of a couple of newspapers and things like that. It's not a glamorous thing, the extra services fee, but what has changed there is actually for the better. They've called it a higher everyday living fee. And the important part about this is that the facility can't mandate that you pay it. So previously, a facility would say, if you're going to stay here, you're going to pay this extra $20 a day for extra services, and we're going to give you not much. So that's what facilities used to do. Now they actually have to itemize what you're going to get for your $20 a day that you're paying extra, and give you the opportunity to opt out. So you'd be like, I don't want those extra services, I don't want to pay for them, then you're within your rights. You weren't previously within your rights to be able to do that. So this blue line along the bottom here is what the old fees used to be. The numbers are a little bit small, but I'll give you the gist of it as we go. Basically, the more money you had, the more you were going to pay for your care fees in a very straight line, right up until you had about $2.2 million in assets, and then you were paying the maximum care fees. So this is after you funded your accommodation. It doesn't include any of the accommodation stuff we talked about, buying the bed versus renting the bed. This is just your ongoing cash flow outside of that that's going to be required. The worst affected people here are not the people at the low end, which is good. So there's this concept of low means in the residential aged care system. So those are individuals with less than about $210,000 in assets. They don't pay the new non-clinical care contribution and basic daily care fee. All they pay is, and hoteling fee. All they pay is that basic daily care fee, which is 85% of their age pension. So the government knows they can afford that, and they take a reasonable amount of it. As you go up in means, so you can see the orange now is the new rules. So you got people who've entered care after 1 November of last year. There's a steep curve at the start. So that's when we start paying that hoteling supplement. And then the steep curve that starts at about 550, 540,000 is where that non-clinical care contribution kicks in. And it's really steep means testing. So means testing is the amount of wealth you have, the more you pay. So as you have more wealth, your fees step up quite dramatically. And once you've got $1 million, and it's just over $1 million now, after a couple of indexations, you're paying the maximum fee. The maximum fee you used to pay was about $58,000 a year, and it capped out at $2.2 million. The maximum fees you will pay under the new rules cap out at about $70,000 with $1 million in assets.
The assets you're talking about includes the home?
The assets I'm talking about, the home's complicated. Good question.
Sorry.
I'll come back to the home. These assets include the amount you pay towards your RAD. So I'll give you a really good example, and the home example is a great one. So if you sell your home, you're an individual, you're living in a home in Brisbane that's worth $1.2 million, let's say. You might have $300,000 in super in the bank. You've got $1.5 million if you sold that home and paid your RAD. So a lot of people, as I said, are going to need to buy their new bed, which means that they've got to sell their old bed, which is the house they're living in. So if you've done that, I've gone and sold my $1.2 million house. I've paid a $700,000 RAD. So now I've got 500 grand extra in the bank, plus that 300 grand I already had there. All of that money, even the amount that I contributed to the RAD, is assessable for these fees. The amount that you contributed to the RAD, though, is not assessed for age pension. So it's assessed as if it's your home. So your home that you live in for age pension is exempt. So this is effectively your new home that you live in is exempt from age pension if you've paid your RAD. but it is assessed as part of these fees. If I use an extreme example, you had no money in the bank, you had to sell your home of $1 million to go and pay for your $700,000 RAD. Now I've only got $300,000 in the bank, but you're telling me I have to pay $70,000 a year in fees. That's exactly the case. That's what's happening. So but because you've paid $700,000 RAD, that money's sheltered from Centrelink. So you're probably getting the full age pension. And for a single person or a couple separated by illness, that's about $30,000 each. So at least $30,000 of that's going to be subsidised by your age pension. And the other 40 grand is going to come from your other assets. Dig into the numbers a little bit more so you can see what this looks like. And I'll come back to the family home again just towards the end, but very low amount of assets, very low amount of fees is what we see here. So you've got 250,000 and that includes everything. If you choose, I'll start with a couple. If you're a couple, you have your family home, one of you needs to go under care. Your home is exempt from these calculations because it's occupied by what they call a protected person. So that's your spouse still living in the home. The government says you can't reasonably sell that home because somebody that's protected, so a spouse is considered a protected person, lives in it. So it remains an exempt asset. So for those people who are retaining the family home, one member of the couple is going into care, your assets might actually not be that much. And so your means testing might not be that harsh. If you are a single person, and you were the only one living in your home, you didn't have a carer that was living there for a number of years and you didn't have a spouse, once you leave and go into residential aged care, your home is assessed up to what they call the home cap, which is 210,000. It's exempt for Centrelink for 2 years. This is where it gets complicated. So this is why we need the professionals in our corner. But as soon as you sell that house, it's your asset. So that's money that's going to count towards these things. So we will see strategies where people might choose to retain their home for a little while because it's worth more than the assessment that it's getting capped at for aged care at 210,000. We might have people that are renting out their former family home, but to the detriment perhaps of the cash flow they're going to have to endure for having not paid their RAD. So remember, if I've got a $1 million RAD, I've got to pay 7.6% on that. That's going to cost me 76 grand a year. I probably need to sell my home to be able to pay that rate. And then we look at all these other care fees along the way. So like I said, they cap out at about $1 million. Aged care advice. And this is probably the most important part, I think, about having this conversation is when I speak to financial planners, they're mostly giving advice to people who are powers of attorney for those going into care. Sometimes they're speaking to the individuals that are planning early for residential aged care, but often a case it's the 50 to 65 to 70-year-old kids that are helping put mum or dad into residential aged care that they're speaking to. And these are all of the things that go into residential aged care advice. And so you need a number of different people in your corner, and I would advocate for all of them. It's not as simple as it's going to be easy just to sell my home and pay my RAD and go into care. How then do I fund that $70,000 a year cash flow? Maybe there are things that I can do to reduce my care fees, reduce the assets that Centrelink and the aged care system can see. Maybe I can increase my age pension, reduce my care fees by some kind of strategic things. I need to think about what's happening with my estate. What are my beneficiaries going to get when all of this is rounded out? So I need a lawyer in my corner. I need to make sure my wills are up to date before I go in, my power of attorney documents so that I can speak to a financial planner about getting mum and dad into care, so that I can get them into a facility. All of these things are very, very important. Accountants for tax and planning ahead of time and afterwards. And then your financial planners, I see it certainly as a project manager for the whole thing. Financial planning is a strategic role, and these are the people that I work with most closely. Financial planners don't just invest people's excess money. They'll go through everything from where you want to go into care, how are we going to make sure that you can fund your cash flow, structure your assets, work with your accountants to make sure that your tax strategies are not producing an unnecessary tax strategy for you. What are your beneficiary goals? Where do your kids like each other? What happens if the estate blows up? All of these kinds of things. Your financial planner is your project manager of all of these professionals that you need in your corner. And these are all of the things that happen when you go into residential aged care and that you need. And so I always advocate for financial advice. I'm not a financial planner, so there'll be a disclaimer here that says that everything I've told you is untrue and you can't sue me. But I've worked with Sebastian for a number of years. Fantastic financial planner. So please reach out to him and the other professionals you hear from today if you have any questions. Thank you.